Hello there, people of the internet. My name is Odur Jagero, and this is Dialogues with Jagero. I have brought a friend of mine, Mr. Omondi Ochuka, to talk about something that has been giving a lot of people sleepless nights in the country, around Africa, and all over the world, and that is the cancer menace. Is it good? Is it okay to call it a cancer menace? Yeah,
that's a very correct term.
Yeah. So a lot of people do not understand. You wake up one day, you go to the office, and you find that a loved one is no longer coming to the office because, and when you try to find out, you realize that they are actually suffering from cancer, and they have gone for long periods of treatment, and probably they will never come back to the office. Okay, or people are having their mothers who are suffering from the same. People are having their brothers, sisters, their in-laws, their children suffering from cancer. So I thought that it would be interesting to dialogue around cancer, talk about your story. I know we have sat down and talked about your story, but I was thinking that we could get a little bit more deeper into it in a type of a mini-series. So I was thinking that the series would go to something like, we are talking about the innocence of life, your life, when it started, and then we talk about the diagnosis, and then we go to the cancer experience, the types of cancers that we have. The other day I was talking to Dr. Katambo, and it was the first time that I was hearing about diabetes, type 1, that is majorly common amongst children.
Yes.
Right? And so I thought that we could do that, and then we talk about the emotional toll that cancer patients go through and people that are immediately around them. In terms of finances, there is the idea of going out to probably get health intervention in India, in Europe, in America, and things like that. And then we talk about cancer and pain. After talking about cancer and pain, we talk about the relationships, the strains that come when a loved one is not able to go there and be the breadwinner anymore, when they're not able to serve themselves tea that they used to have, or they are not able to cook for you like they used to do. And then finding solace, finding peace, and then talking about the darkest hours, preservation of hope and survivorship. So there are folks that probably are going to hear your story for the first time. And whether negative or positive, your story is very, very, very interesting. There is a part of your story that I've always wanted you to talk about, but you've always decided...
evaded it. I don't say I would...
You have evaded that story. So I would like you to introduce yourself.
Yes.
What you do. Yeah.
My name is Omondi Ochuka. I am turning 31 in June, actually in the next 15 days.
Yeah.
I'm a researcher. I'm an economist. I'm a teacher or educator.
Yeah.
I'm a father. I'm a poet and a writer. I'm soon publishing, so they're gonna call me an author.
Yeah.
So that is briefly about me.
So probably tell me about your new upcoming book.
A new upcoming book, I would call it a memoir journal, because it introduces the last decade plus 2 years of my life, which is the time when I was also surviving cancer or living with cancer. And it also reflects back on a few of the landmark, because when you look at somebody's story, it's always nested in other areas of their life. So if you carve out these 10 years of my life or this decade of my life, it does not stand on isolation.
Yeah.
You realize that it goes back to childhood. It goes back to because, for example, when I was now looking, could it be possible that in my family history there was cancer?
Yeah.
So that means that I cannot actually look at my story in isolation, but I have to go back to my childhood. I have to go back to, was I a sick person or a sick child when I was young? Is there a history of cancer in our family? And then also look at what has made you towards the point when the cancer is coming when I was 19. That's a lot of years to have lived.
Yes.
And it's not nothing. So the book is going to capture that. And I think it's also going to introduce my story for those who have not heard it before on text. And then it's also going to introduce 3 other books that are coming. I'm hoping to publish my thesis, one, and then also publish a
Is this a book?
Yeah, into a book.
This is a book.
A thesis is a dissertation for a master's. Or
but it can be read as a book.
Yeah, it can be read as a book. Yes, and then also a cancer survivors handbook. So those one will come later, but this is supposed to introduce it as a foundational map, a roadmap for the rest of the works to come. Yeah.
So tell me about where you were born, where your name comes from. Yes. Tell me about your family.
I was born to a young mother. My mother was in year 2 of college when I was born. And I do not know my father. And that is, I think, one of the stories that I have not always been very keen on discussing publicly. Yeah. Particularly because I felt that at some point I had to let go of it. Because when you have such a blank story or an emptiness, there's this particular song by Chuka Basel. You know Chuka Basel?
Yeah.
It's called Wuragola.
Yeah, I played it in the morning.
Yes,
funnily enough.
It's one of my best songs. So many people think it's a dodge, and it is. Something very interesting about Wuragola is Oching's mother was remarried in Gemujibe. And so one day, his stepfather, who he knew as his father, texts the whole family because they were going to beat home, Goyodala. They were going to build a home. And he's left in Nairobi. So when they come back, this is as the tale has it. When he comes back, he asks the mother, why did you go home and leave me behind? And the mother, after, of course, confrontation, comes up open and says, this is not actually your real father, your biological father. And because Luos, when you are born out of wedlock, usually you move with your mother to the next marriage. Yeah. That is because there is very little link of a son, particularly with the matriarchal side of the family, the mother's side. So Chieng decides to go on a journey to Asembo Kokise. Yeah. And the story goes on to say that he meets his father, Adoyo Ogola. And shortly after, the real father now passes on. So he is left with an interface of identity. You see, most men derive identity from their fathers. Mine is a bit unique because when I come into consciousness, the people I find as my parents are my grandparents. I know very little about my mother. I only know that there's a grandmother.
Can you tell us a little bit about your mother? She was year 2 where?
She was at Penn State. And from what I know, the little that I know is that I don't think that they approved of my relationship with my father. And that brought in a lot of confusion because when you are a young girl and you are just starting about your life, and you are also raised by a Christian family, a very conservative Christian family. So sometimes you feel like you let down your parents when you get a child out of wedlock or when you get a child with somebody who your parents do not approve. So that goes as far as I am aware of my story. But there is also a lot that I also do not know. But out of the need to heal and out of my necessary well-being, I decided that I'm not going to pursue it further because I noticed that it could be something very painful within the family. Because I had asked all people that I knew would be able to be open about it, and share it. One, including my family, my late uncle, Freddie, my grandmother. Yeah. I asked her twice. I asked my auntie twice. And then I asked one of my mother's childhood friends. She was called Anna. She died of brain cancer actually 3 years ago. So when you find that there is a dead end in people that are very close to your mom or close to your story, you are heartbroken about it. And you begin to retrace back because you cannot hold this wound forever. At some point, yes, it is my story and it's up to me to populate it with the kind of truth, to leave my truth in it. But when you realize that it could be a festering wound, you decide to let it go because out of your own peace of mind, out of your own coming of age. Because you realize when you're younger, when I was young, I used to throw a lot of tantrums when I was a teenager because it bothered me. How could you be so loving as a family, as a grandfather? I admired my grandparents. They are the epitome of what I would say love looks like. I always wanted love like theirs. And yet, on the very onset also, they deny me one of the very fundamental truths about who I am. That has a way of cutting some grief inside of you. You know, you begin to know that somebody who loves you can as well fatalize you so much.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't hold it against them. I have come to understand that when you are living, when you are human, you have a story, and some of our stories are very messy. In fact, no family is without crisis in their midst. Even as we're talking, families look only good when you look at it from outside. You know,
Sometimes I think I have when I came to, my father died just before I started college. And when I was in college, 5 months into my college, my mother also died. And where I was going to school, it was a very intimate community. And basically you will know that somebody's father has come into college to probably visit them or pay school fees and things like that. And just the fact that I wasn't having my mother and my father around because I was still really young. I was not tough enough to be on my own. But I found myself on my own in Nairobi. And I was very jealous and envious of people who had fathers. So when I saw somebody going out with their parents for lunch, and you watch them go down the street to go eat lunch, it was very painful to me. And I think the pain also came from the fact that without my father and without my mother, there was no lunch money, pocket money. So I attached that love of my parents with luck. So my parents were not there, and I had very acute luck. I had acute luck in food, in college school fees. I had acute luck in shelter. I had acute luck in everything. But then I have come to realize, and I'm saying this so that we can go back to what you think, because I do not think that the people that were being paid a visit by their parents, reveled in it and appreciated it.
Most of them take it for granted.
Yeah, so I think even right now, I see people that have got their mothers and their fathers, they would call them their own pick. Yeah. You see? And for me right now, I'm just imagining that Roda Nyarabondo is alive, or Mogo Tekot is alive, It would be such. So do you think that perhaps they don't feel it? Your father was having his father, your grandmother had her father, and your sisters and Freddie had their fathers and their parents. Do you think that they were not feeling the pain, that they were detached from that longing to have a father?
I think that's one of the things that contributes to this pain. A lot of people, particularly, if I look at my maternal family, all of them have their parents. They were alive, even up to, let's say, age 25. So it's very possible that these people are not able to empathize compassionately with my story. They're not able to fully occupy it.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it happens even when we'll be looking at stigma later on in the subsequent episodes. We realize that stigma comes from the idea of being disconnected from somebody's story, and then also not believing that could as well be you. Or that's why we sometimes say when let's say a lady is killed and the internet goes very wild and they say, could that be your sister? Could that be your mom? Because you want to bring it closer to you so that you can zoom in the lens and feel, this is a human being. And this could as well be Atieno. This could as well be Wangeshi, who is my sister. You understand? And it's possible that led to their lack of empathy, because we are products of relationships. We are products of stories. I know most of us, when we were growing up, there was very little about how did you guys meet? I mean, my grandmother was very open to tell me how they met with my grandfather, how they were dating.
Yeah.
But it's now when I ask about, what about my father? What about my mother and my father's story? Then there is a huge silence. And it's very possible that they do not get to be in that space where, how could this boy be feeling, not knowing that very important aspect of his life, And that is the essence of how people are not able to tie your shoelaces, because it's individually yours. There is a part of somebody's story that you can only escort them and then reach that point and then say, now you go, we'll be cheering you on. And I feel like however difficult this story should have been or was, they should have opened about it, particularly when I had come of age. So that the rest of it is up to me to process it, whether it is grievous, whether it is beautiful, whether it was a love story cut short. I do not know about that, but it would have been better and it would have been dignifying, so that I would be let into the story, so that I get to process and make my own choices. Remember, your father could be very awful to your mom, but very beautiful to you. It happens. The dissonance is happening a lot in families. So, and then even if he was such a bad person, it would have still been up to me to decide, you are an awful person. No wonder these guys cut you off. You understand? And even if it was a rape, I could be a product of a rape. You understand? And you see, these things happen. These are real story, lived experiences. And when I'm young and I'm a teenager, I'm coming up, that's very normal to say, he's not ready yet. This is a very heavy thing to put on his shoulders. But when you have come of age, and this is where I'm going when I'm now having my daughter, there's a particular chapter where I'm talking about the very first time I took a war to see my grandmother. A war is named after my grandmother's mom. You see? So I was very intentional in terms of preserving the heritage. I lived to see a war, my great-grandmother. I loved her. She was very jovial and cheerful and funny and loving. Those are some of the things that I wanted to pursue through my lineage. And these are some of the traits and values that I see in my grandmother, that which she also instilled in me. So I ask her about it, and there's just this grave silence. I don't know whether you have seen the silence of a parent. Maybe siku moja umetoka chuo, and then you come back and umwambia, Oriembo nefi, we've been sent away for school fees. I remember a particular time when I was sent home, I was expelled. And I come home and I find Grams alikuwa nentipu, though she was in the garden. And she sees me, like, this thing doesn't look okay. So she takes her lasso and ties it. And there is a certain sinister look on the face. Because parents have a way of absorbing a child's pain and grief, a child's worry, a child's questions. And this particular face, it's like a parental face. I don't know whether you have it. When my daughter calls me that she is having some very bad difficulties at school, and she's 6,000 miles away from me, I have this face. When Maya is sick, you have this face. When parents are worried about their children, because the idea is you're supposed to be protecting your child from everything, but the reality of life is we cannot. So however awful my story is, I do not believe that they should have cordoned it and walled it and fenced it so uptight that they could not tell me about it.
It's very interesting that it never even leaked.
It never. It never leaked.
So that means that the circle is very small.
The circle is very small, or the trauma was well managed, as it is the case with most people born as me. And we go back to what you are asking me about the fencing, the shame around children born out of wedlock. First of all, let's just drop the wedlock thing, because this is something that was not there in African setup. If you're born, many people were born by their cousins. Your dad's cousin. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they would be taking. They would take the father's name, not the other person who gave birth to them.
Yeah.
And because now the white man comes and says the only way to solidify and sanitize a marriage or a relationship is for you to have a wedding. All right? And then now everything that comes before that is called premarital. In other words, you have put a moral high ground for weddings or for marriage, so that anything that comes before that is condemned. And that's why many people call us, I don't think it's a very derogatory term called kimirwa.
I've never understood what that exactly means.
I think kimirwa is somebody, when your mother gives birth to you premaritally, and then they get married elsewhere. So when you also move to that place with them, the mother, you're called nyathi kimirwa. Although some people like Kermboya has a very different term. I'll look for it and then we'll put it on the highlight of YouTube. But nyathi kimirwa is somebody who the mother goes with to a different marriage. In other words, they don't have a direct link with this new father. And it's very derogatory because it seems Yathimo Bigo, somebody, the child.
Yeah, but what is Kimirwa though?
Midrock is do you know Ombasa? There is something called Ombasa. It's something that has tendrils. Yes. Or if you have seen guava.
Kimirwa means Duanyirwok?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes. And then also, if you see, for people like Oguda, Gabriel Oguda, who like guavas and maperas. Guavas and maperas have a very funny way. You can find that the mapera is just fine, and then there's two little branches that is very funny. It doesn't yield, but it's very healthy.
Yes.
Yes. But it's up, blooming from the tree, So
Miro was a type of tendril kind of plant.
Yeah, a tendril. Because it ties itself and it doesn't have a particular root. It doesn't have a particular root
or a
heritage. Yes.
So good rock, Duanyirwok.
Yes.
I see.
So that's why it is very derogatory. So that goes back to how we view people who are not sanitized by marriage or relationships.
Let's go back to your story. Where you do you know where you were born? Kamaminu knew exactly.
Well, my birth certificate says Mvula Lane. I am not sure.
Mvula Lane in Nairobi.
Yes. So I usually say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was supposed to be in America.
Yes. So I do not know exactly the whole story.
But then let's go back to let's then continue with the story. Where do you grow up, and how does it look like?
When I grew up, I think, in looking back in retrospect, some of the happiest years of my life between 0 and 10. Because during this time, I would call it the innocent years. I still do not know my grandparents are not my parents. I have a sense that I am the younger child. We were a very big family in the village. When my grandparents retired, they moved home. And now most of the time we were with my grandmother when my grandfather was a researcher in Makerere and Maseno. So we spent a lot of time in the village. I always say I'm more of a village boy than I am of a Nairobi boy. All the places that we lived, Makerere or Kampala, or all those places. So I would attribute a huge part of my life to be in the village. We grew up going for Kwath. There's a part called Ngege. It's almost 15 kilometers towards the border of Kericho and Kisumu County. I loved it. We grew up going to Nyabondo.
Nyabondo Kaleo for prayers?
Yeah, Kaleo for sports, for church. We grew up hunting with my peers and all that. We grew up going for farming every morning. There was a way things ran in our family. And it was very meticulous. There was a sense of organization, a sense of harmony. And these are some of the values that I was telling you I really admire. Because my grandparents were two worlds apart. My grandfather, Francis Ochuka, I would say he was a perfectionist. He loved doing things in a certain way, and he was very methodical. My grandma, on the other side, was spontaneous, and she was also very strict, being a former teacher, and then also owing to her personality. And she had a sense of OCD, like a way of, she wants things done very pristine way. So this introduces how excellence, is cultivated within everybody who lived in that home. And we also had a lot of relatives. Some of them were not directly related.
Where does the language come from? The articulation that you have? Is it the father or is it the grandfather or the grandmother?
I would say both, because many people do not know. And now that we are introducing different aspects of my life, I did not speak for a long time.
Oh, really?
Yes. Until I think my first best speech came when I was about 6.5 years.
Wow.
So many people thought I would be mute. And I was also the dumb kid.
I know.
Yeah.
That I don't believe.
Yes, absolutely.
No. You are a slow learner? What?
I was a slow learner because I fell on the ASD or the autistic spectrum.
Oh, yeah?
So I had difficulties learning. I had difficulties socializing. I did not speak for a long time. I used to read. I used to just write.
Socialization still goes out all to date.
To date.
You know, what I've realized with you is that you're very funny to be around, but then people have to invent you. People have to find you out. Like, know that, okay, this guy can take a joke, this guy can take everything. But when they meet you for the first time, they really can't tell. You know, you're very difficult to read. Yeah, I think
that is very true. I get it a lot, even from my students, even from my partners. How we get to meet.
Yeah.
And they tell you are very unapproachable, but you have a certain charisma or energy around you. So I had I would say a bit of a challenging time. Had it not been for the many trips there was a therapist in Kisumu, Indian lady, Dr. I think Rajna, who helped me with a lot of speech therapy, and upon insistence from my grandma. So I think when I peaked, it was the point of no return. I was now very good at math. Particularly, I could do very complex numbers at a very young age. I used to compete with my auntie Dory, who was way, way older than me, because she was about 20 years older than me. By mid-school, I was already reading stuff that was in secondary. And there was a way that our household was organized. There was time for preps, there was time for feeding, and it was very strict around it. And so when I now made myself, of course, I could still stutter. If you're very careful, for anybody who has ever interacted with me, when I'm excited or when I'm in panic mode or having an anxiety, I usually stutter. I think it kind of triggers that part. Or I fidget a lot. But when I get to be more comfortable, which is why you're saying people have to invent me. It's very hard for somebody to like me they would, but it's very hard for them to figure me out on the first instance.
Yeah.
You have to absorb me slowly, and then you realize, he has a side. He's sociable also. He can be sociable if he wants to, and especially if I am comfortable. So that is the setting of my family, and that is the background of how I grew up.
Going to college, where do you go to college? Because this now introduces us to when you but let's go to your girlfriend, meeting your girlfriend. Yeah? Is that when you were in college, right?
No, not yet. I'm still
Not
in
yet.
high school. She is in college. I'm in high school.
Okay, can you tell me about this story? Because this story is very, very, very important, I think.
So I got there was a caucus that was organized by UNEP. And we went to present. I remember back then, we went to present at UNEP. I think there was a group of high school students selected from around Kenya. I was fortunate enough to be on it. It was about climate change and cultural heritage. I was actually delivering a speech on it. So that is where I get to meet Nikki. Nikki was interning at UNEP in Gigiri. So after that, it was just a bit of a chit chat. Like, I'm interested. You delivered a very good speech. How old are you? Where are you schooling? And I tell a bit about myself. So there we exchange numbers. I didn't have a phone back then, I'm just a student. And I was just feeling like, maybe this is somebody that just might be useful maybe when I join college, because she's 2 years older than me. I was in Form 3 then. But I think our relationship sort of bloomed a year later, when now I am going to sit my KCSE in November 2009. So after we completed, I remember we completed on 29th of November. I traveled to Nairobi and I looked for her. And we go on a date, and we get to know each other. She tells me about her Rwandan background. She's half Rwandese and Kenyan. So we set it off, and it's one of those very they say love grows on you for a lot of us. Hardly ever is it like a boomer, like an old star exploding. Of course, that is the chemistry part of it, but true love, in essence, tends to grow on people. It sneaks on you when you least expect it. I'm just a student who hopes to go to the next level, which is college. I have no idea I'm going to be married. In fact, it's the farthest of any aspirations I'm having at that point. But then now you meet somebody who's very beautiful and she's very articulate. She is into art. She's very smart. And she can read through you. I think that's one of the things that I value a lot. People who can hold space for you. I call them placeholders. You have been one such person for me. And it's such a privilege to have such a person, particularly for people who navigate through the world feeling a sense of loss. Like we have introduced earlier. There was, in a sense, even though I am somebody who is very self-confident and self-affirmed, there's a sense of an identity crisis that I've always carried through with me. And that hinders relationships, whether it is platonic or whether it is romantic, because you tend to look yourself before the mirror of your past that is not fulfilled, that is not complete yet. And that can sometimes stop you from making meaningful connections. And when you find somebody that assures you that, I also came from a war-torn country. In fact, my mother survived by a whisker. My father survived, but later on passed on by cancer. So you get to be humanized. You tend to be occupying their story as if, they occupy your story as if it was their own. And that brings you even closer with each other. So that is what drew me closer to her, besides, of course, the beauty. So we set it off, and I think officially I asked her out on March 2010, on 12th. That is, I think, would be the anniversary of our relationship. So there's a time now we travel to Rwanda for a long time. They have not been to Rwanda for a long time. And as we are looking up towards Kigali, the hills of Kigali, it's beautiful, it's in twilight.
Nyamirambo Hills.
Yes, and she tells me that I want to tell you something. But I don't want you to be sad, or I don't want you to be to panic about it. This is somebody that has learned about you, and they know your trigger points. They know how to go about conversations about something as sensitive as that. And I remember her telling me things to the words, "If you do not want a son, then I'll give you a daughter." And I was like, history is repeating itself, and history has a very funny way of repeating itself. Here I am, a young father. I'm in college. And we are having a baby.
She tells you this?
Yes. I remember the joy it felt, even though for a long time, even to date, it's going to come out wrong because I have a daughter. And I'm going to acknowledge this truth as much as, because it's a living truth. And it would be very dishonest to discard it off. And it does not in any way take away the love that I have for my daughter. I would. I never thought that I would have a child. I never wanted it.
Now, I hope that you're enjoying this program. Over the last 15 years, I have been working online for clients in America, in Europe, and all over the world. And that is why it pains me a lot when I see a lot of African brothers and sisters saying that they do not have a job. Now, this is the problem. A lot of people are trying to look for a job in 2024 in their own town, in their own country, in their local area. Now, the truth is, there are no jobs in Africa, at least not so many jobs. The good news is that we have internet these days. We have a tablet, we have a computer, we have a phone, and that means that we can do a lot of jobs. And those jobs are online. That is why over the last 4 years, I've been writing a book that is called Digital Goldmine. It is a book that explains to you how you can earn money online. The 18 hustles that I've chosen are basically for Africans. Okay, because what happens when you are doing online jobs is that payment is usually a problem. So these 18 side hustles that I have put together in this book, you can be paid very well and very conveniently. Okay, so the book is only 1,000 Kenya shillings. That is about $10. You can buy it in Kenya using paybill number. You can buy it online from anywhere in the world using a credit or a debit card. All the information about this book is in the description below. Just need to go to the description, click on the link, and you can buy this book. And if you have a brother, you have a wife, you have a husband, you have a friend who is sitting at home and watching Netflix, please do buy this book for them. If you are the one sitting at home and watching Netflix and have nothing to do, please buy this book, and your life is gonna change forever. Because I have been doing this online, and I've been traveling, and I've been enjoying myself and having a lot of fun. So thank you very much, and now back to program.
Yeah, so that turns out to be one of my best moments in life.
Getting to know that you've got a kid on the way.
Got a kid coming on the way. So when we come back to Nairobi, the story changes a bit. We do the ultrasound, and we realize there are 2 heartbeats. So it's not just one child, there are 2 children. The only complication that also comes up is Nikki was having sickle cell disease, CSD, SCD. And she was in and out of the hospital a lot. So obviously when that happens, the chances or the nature of the pregnancy is very, there's a lot of challenges in it. From frequent transfusions to many ER visits to frequent illnesses. So we are afraid that maybe the kids are not going to come full term. And indeed they did not. So our children, I remember this particular time when I was in school.
Yes.
The first time I was scared as an expecting parent. I was in school, and at Thurdiboro they never used to allow phones, but I had a phone. I sneaked mine. I used to keep it. It's very funny. I don't know if Mr. Chile is gonna watch this. I used to keep it in a zipper bag. You know a zipper bag?
The small ones.
The small
the one for the toiletry one.
Yes. So I had a Motorola flap, and I used to keep in that zipper bag. And there used to be some jerry can in our cube in the water. I used to keep it there because you would come and they would do all the butterfly. We used to call it butterfly when the teachers come and they check the boxes because they knew they had wind of who had phones. But when they come to the cube, they would not find it because it's in the least expected. But I remember this time when the network.
Yes.
Yeah. So you and Safaricom had very good offers late night. So we would sneak to talk about, to call our girlfriends or our parents.
Why are you sharing the phone?
I used to share it with my friend Felix and Amon. So I call Nikki, and it's almost, I think, 2 months to KCSE. This is about October, September. And Lavan, Nikki's sister, tells me she is admitted. So I do what we do best. We used to call it KQ. KQ is just flying over the fence. And I go to Kisumu and board Easy Coach. Before I board Easy Coach, I see Mr. Kelo, who is also in town. But I'm in my school clothes. I'm not in my school clothes. I've already changed. I go the whole time between Kisumu. It was a night travel. We left at 10:30. I was simply worried about her and if the kids are safe. So when I come, I go straight to Mata Hospital. I meet Lavan and Nikki's family, and they tell me that she's stabilized, but the doctor is very worried that they might not even make it to 6 months. True to the doctor's words and our own fears, our daughters were born on 15th of February 2011. And this is now the difficulty that comes with being a young father and a sickling girlfriend. And you are still also in search mode of your story. Your story is incomplete before you. In other words, you don't only getting to discover yourself. But one thing that I have not mentioned before, and I did hint about it, is the idea of excellence, the idea of service. I usually tend to think that all of our lives, it's about love and service. That is, if we are raised upright, if we are raised compassionately, if we teach ourselves to be better than where we have been from, or the story of our life that brought us to being, then we are to each other love and service, and we grew up with a sense of responsibility towards each other. And that in itself informed me not to deny the pregnancy, as it's often the case. I even felt that could it be possible that was the case with my mom? So I just simply wanted to be very responsible towards my children. I usually call it the twin joy, twin sorrow. I mentioned twin twice because you are having... There's a picture I had. It was ruined when I was rained on terribly on 2015. Again, March on 8th. That is the last time that I had that picture that photo in good form. It was us holding our hands clasped together. Mine and Nikki's holding our daughters before, of course, Myra was taken away. And Awur is taken to the neonatal care. So it becomes a very terrifying moment, but also very fulfilling, because you are mourning a child that you do not know who they would have become, the potential of who they would have become, and how that would have changed you as a parent, as a father. But you are also very grateful that the other twin is alive. Although she is born weak, she's a premature baby, but she is alive. And so there is a potential that she could carry on the story of her elder sister.
Yeah.
So our eldest daughter was stillborn. She did not survive the pregnancy, and Awur was premature at 7 months. So we only had Awur to carry our legacy or our story further. And it was very terrifying because you do not know what to feel, and many people tend to experience such life-changing events way later in life. But when you're 19, it's further than what is expected.
Yeah.
So it's a twin joy and twin grief, because I am very happy that I'm a father. I am happy that Nikki is still alive, because most people who struggle or who are battling sickle cell disease, they hardly ever make it past their late teens. And I have a daughter to now take care of. So this has a way of expanding your story very fast, because immediately now you are a father. You're no longer just a grandson to your grandmother. You're just now as a father. You're now a partner. You're now having to step into the big shoes. And most importantly, it also brings your story closer home, because now you begin to question yourself. One day, a word will ask me, so tell me about your father. Tell me about Guka. Tell me about your own story. What will you tell her? What will I tell her? I ask myself. So these are some of the questions that are going through my mind. What kind of a father am I going to be? There's always this looming sense of fear. And people like Akina Mildred Awino will tell you that when you are doing divination for somebody, or when you are taking accounts or self-auditing your life, look at some of the things or where you come from. You look at, if you are a responsible person, you want to see how you want to change your story. I know a lot of us, and particularly this was very much highlighted when Mukoma Wangugi came up with the story about his dad. And the other side that many people, the audience of Ngugi wa Thiong'o, don't know. But that is ideally or allegedly his viewpoint.
Yeah.
So when we grew up, we have these viewpoints of life. And some of us, all those who are listening, came from very horrendous places. Family of like a battlefield, a Gaza, a Baghdad, where domestic violence was the thing, where incomplete stories like mine, and that's a trauma, by the way, it's a generational trauma. So you look at yourself and you want to make it different. You want to be a present father, you want to be a loving father, you want to be a father who does not shy from uncomfortable conversations, And it was good, but then they always say that grief and love as a way of complicating our story, if not enhancing it. It enables us to be more expanded, but it can also be very diminishing because you get to feel so alone in it. You have people around you, like I had, Nikki's family. And remember, this time I have not yet opened up about my story to my family yet. They do not know this is happening. They do not know that I am a father. Partly because I felt angry. I felt not ready to introduce the new chapter in my life to them. I felt like I was getting at them, and I felt justified doing it. I felt like if you are not ready to share your story with mine, then there's no way I'm going to be vulnerable with you as well. So for a long part between 2010s and 2012, I lived a very isolated life. I was carefully curating what to tell my family, including one of the best human beings in my life, my grandmother. And that is when I noticed that it's not the best way to live. Remember, they always say that love without vulnerability is impossible. And when you carve yourself out, thinking that you are self-preserving, for example, if I do not brave myself enough to tell you, Oduor, I am in shit.
Yeah.
I am having these thoughts, and I thought that I would contain them, but they are devastating me. Then I risk losing your love. I risk losing your sight. I risk losing you hearing me out. I think that I am protecting our friendship. I think that maybe if I tell you, I would feel ashamed by it. But when I tell you, it could also be the only chance of you seeing me and of also you loving me. And I realized that for a long time, I was not allowing my grandmother to love me, despite the kind of grudge that I held towards her, that I held towards my family. And so at some point in July on 12th, we travel home, and it's the very first time that I am introducing a word to my grandmother. I tell her, my mama, this is your mom, because I named her after the mom. But I'm also very much strategic in terms of, could this be the moment where she could loosen up and tell me about my story? Because I think that trading vulnerability, sometimes think that when somebody is vulnerable with you, then it eases them up. They breathe out and they say, I could also be vulnerable. I could also share this, something that has been gnawing at me and eating me inside. Maybe it's not that bad after all. But that silence that I was telling you, it happened again. And from that point onward, I have never wanted to ask anybody about my story. I let it go. I instead now decentered people, because sometimes you expect love from people, and yet love is first cultivated in you. Love is an inside job. In fact, from what I've learned in my whole life, is if you do not cultivate love in your own garden, then you become very resentful towards other people. And people can pick it, your energy. When you're very pessimistic, when you're always disorganized, when you're always the runaway, you can't hold love together. When people give you love, you resent it. You run away from it. You're an avoidant. People can pick that energy. And people can pick us as spark. They see that you have such a very tough life. You have had to go through fire, but then again, they see the beauty in you. They see how you hold your truth and how you live your truth. Many people hold their truths, but they don't live it.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yes, you do.
You can decide not to answer it completely.
Right.
There's a time when we were doing the fundraiser together, and I came over to your place. I think it was huko karibu na Dagoretti huko, where you were living with that beautiful lady. You remember?
Yes, Ademba Agoro, my girlfriend then.
Agoro, yes. I felt like she was really taking care of you.
Yes, she was.
And she was very, very loving to you. Do you think that what you're speaking of happened in that relationship?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And these are some of the valuable insights that you get after coming of age. Because when it is happening, it's too far close. The frame is very close. You don't see anything. In fact, you see, like when a picture is very close to you only see pixelated things. But when you step farther away, you get to see, I see. And I always feel very wary when you meet people in their history and they tell you my ex was a bad. Okay, they might be that bad. But chances are, what were your contributions to it? And that's where your question comes in. Agoro was very loving, and she was artsy. She was self-sacrificing. She was very supportive also. But then there was also the idea of how matured enough are you to be able to contain such a vast story. And those are some of the perils of being a young person, even for me, because you do not know how to handle yourself. You do not know how to communicate your truth and how to live it, because you somehow walk with these thorns around your edge. You are a barbed wire in a desolated field of war. And you are bound to, scratch people. And that's the whole idea of love. You cannot love people without scratching them. But you also need to exercise a certain discretion so that when you do so, one, you are remorseful. Two, you exercise a show of compassion. And then three, you are able to actually make amends. And amends happen all the time. Anybody who gets to a point where they're comfortable and they don't want to make amends, relationships die. So I think that, yes, our relationships ended with Goro, but the amend happened. And looking back, I think we had a conversation sometime in 2018 when I will talk about it later. And now we were reflecting in terms of what could we have done better had chance been provided. And now you have the resource of looking back, or the resource of the review. So when we travel back home and I see that same face in my grandmother, and I'm like, nah, okay, Nyabiru, it's okay. And there's something very interesting when an old person tells you it's okay. Yeah. You get angry when you're young, but sometimes when you have also
Did you actually bring forth the issue again?
Yes, explicitly.
Oh, yeah?
I did not mince my words. That is the only chance, and that is also the only chance of closure I had.
All she said was, it is okay.
It is okay. And she smiled. Let me hold my mother. We are ting mino. Those are the words that she said. I am happy that, yes, the silence was there, but there was a loving smile.
Would you still like to know whether your father is alive or not today?
No. I think I am complete in my coming.
How about if you had a phone call at 5 a.m. in the morning that your father is, that you've been asking for the last 30 years? How old are you?
I'm 31 in June.
Yeah, you've been asking for the last 20-something odd years about your father. I know where your father is. I know him by name. He's alive.
I don't know. I don't think it will change much. Like I tell you, the issue of fatherhood is mostly on identity, particularly if you have missed out on the subtle details of fatherhood, where they hold you, they take you to school, they chuna your maskio kidogo when you go astray. When you miss out on those subtleties of fatherhood, of parenthood, or relationship between you and your dad.
They say that you'll always remain a child.
You'll always remain a child, number one. And then number two, most of us are so hell-bent on finding out. And then you realize, as many human beings who keep on searching for something, that it does not change much. You will get it. It will not fill that hole, particularly if you did not do the self-work of looking at who are you, who can you be,
Do you think
the potential of who you are.
Do you think that we can know whether a hole is going to be filled when there is no soil to fill it?
Yes. Because we can look at what has happened to other people. And that's why I'm saying, particularly if you have not done the self-work. The idea is, you're looking for a father who went astray, a father whose story you do not know, hoping that it will fill that void.
Some people say that sometimes they did not go astray.
Yes.
Sometimes they didn't even know that I had a child somewhere.
Right.
So the idea of them having strayed is irrelevant because they have no clue.
They have no
As a
clue.
matter of fact, they might be very happy.
Yes.
So your father might be some rich landlord in Pennsylvania. You're a heir to a huge farm in Jacksonville.
All possibilities.
All possible, but anyway.
Right.
Let's go on.
So,
The story of Nikki goes on.
So she dies. I remember.
Under what circumstances does Nikki die?
Nikki dies on August 23rd in 2011. This is 5 months after, delivery, after giving birth. I get a call from Lavan, Nikki's sister, and she says, "I'm sorry," and hangs up. You know it. When you get that call, you know it. I don't know whether you've had such a call before.
They broke the news of my mother's death in a very disorganized way.
Yeah,
They sent a message to school and said that tell Ken that his mother is dead.
that's it.
Yeah. And then, so in fact, it was my classmate that they sent the text to. It was very, so they also didn't, my friend was not able to break that news to me until a day later. So he just received the text and looked at it, shared with the classmates. And, I thought something changed with the classmates,
You could read it.
Yeah, but I didn't know what it was. So next, I think my friend now went to the administration and delivered the news to them so that they can figure out, they're adults, they can figure out how to do it to me. So that's how they did it. But then they tell you that, I'm sorry, and they hung up in your case. And where are you?
I'm in my small cubicle in Hurlingham. I had a job.
You are at the university now?
I'm not enrolled yet, but I was interning at Chase Bank.
Interning from
high school. I'm waiting to join in a few months. I get the call. I remember feeling a sense of there is no chair. I don't know whether that feeling is real or not.
What do you mean a feeling of there is no chair?
You sink into the emptiness of where the chair is supposed to be. And then now it becomes a premonition. All the things that you feared would happen are happening. I think that's one of the toughest days of my life, looking back. Because now I am a widower. I don't know whether I'm a widower because we are not married yet.
Yeah.
But you have lost somebody who is very
But
important.
the mother
to
of
you.
your child is gone.
And my first thought goes to, what will I do with our child? I think that was the first thing that came after the ringing. There's a certain ringing that comes when you receive such a very devastating news. What will I do with the war? Why? I think I did not cry. I hardly ever cry. I don't know why.
You don't cry?
Hardly. But I sigh a lot or smile a lot. I go to Nairobi Hospital where she was admitted. I remember walking, but I did not remember the journey in between. I only find myself at the bedside, holding her nude, done nails. They were very done. I'm told she did
They
them.
have not taken her to the mortuary.
Yes. It's in the morning. I ask her, could I come see her off? Yeah, it's like, yeah, even the family is coming, so you could come. Nails were very cute. I'm told she also asked for the scrubs, new fresh ones. The diary, which was having a very scarlet red cover, was laying just at the edge of the bed. It contrasted with the nails on her, the color on the nails of her fingers. She smiled. I tried to call her name, but there was no answering back. I asked Lavan, could you believe it? And all of a sudden now everybody was, moving farther away out of the ward, leaving me and I and Nikki. Death has a way of stopping you, pausing you at a very instant. And you are trapped between a question and an answer. And this is particularly very important because it introduces the onset of a megaton grief that would be the first death that hits me very bad after my grandfather's. I did not get a chance to mourn my daughter, Myra, because there was no time to do that. I had a sick girlfriend. I had a premature baby to take care of, to go there every other time. So there was no luxury or that window to, and this happens a lot with people who lose loved ones. Hardly ever. You go, you bury, and then after 2-3 days, you come back to Nairobi, you go back to places of work. There is never that room to process things. So this is the first time that now the true grief of losing Myra comes in. And the question of now the mother is gone as well. And the potential that even Nikki could as well be gone. And it's compounded in a very terrifying manner. So I sit there, I don't know what to tell her, I don't know what to do. I just hold my, her hand and say that maybe the other side is less painful, because Nikki had known pain. As many people in the audience will be watching or listening to us, sickle cell is having a very bad pain. There's an episode we did, DWJ did with sickle cell disease warrior. They can tell you that pain is excruciating. And I would have witnessed it. I witnessed it over and over until it became my own. And that kind of pain is even worse because I can feel your pain whenever you tell me, man, my heels are killing me.
Yeah.
But I cannot hold it. I can only feel it because I've also been that close to pain. And when such things happen, it wears into your skin. And then now grief becomes officially my story. And you look back and you begin to also mourn yourself. The potential of what is cut short tragically by death. The early onset of things that many people experience in their 40s or 50s, you are experiencing when you're 19. Man, that was difficult. Yeah, it was difficult.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
So after that, you're not yet out to dry.
Yeah.
You're not out to dry yet. Tell me about that fateful time, because we're going back even darker and darker, There's a song by, the song? I Give You Darker. What is the name of that guy's song? I forget the name. I was only listening to it yesterday.
Sounds like Bob Dylan. I don't know.
No, is it? Yeah. No, it's not Dylan.
Clapton.
It's the other guy. I've forgotten the name.
Okay, we'll check it out. Yes.
Your cancer diagnosis comes. Tell me about how it comes about.
Many people get a cancer diagnosis based on a premonition. My only premonition are the griefs that I suffered, that I'm enduring in the year of 2011. That's a very dark-pitched year. It could never get darker than that year, because this is a year that you're supposed to now start your life as a scholar to be. This is the year that you get your twin daughters. This is the year that you are blessed to be a father. But this is also the year that you get a cancer diagnosis. There is something that informed me to name my book Precursor.
Yeah.
When Rick Sonyango and Kasichana invites me, I think this is about 3 weeks before I travel to India. And I asked Rick to open a Word document. One, because I'm trying to manage, all the lines that I had prepared in my head have all vanished. And I'm fidgeting, I'm panicking. And I'm wondering, what am I going to tell the crowd that is looking to me? There was this picture that Osborne Macharia took. I don't know if you remember, with my hand like this.
I organized it.
Yes, you did. Yes, you drove me that. You drove me to Macharia Studios, actually. And I told them, when you look back at your life, the same way the cursor is now blinking on the Word document, you somehow think that this story that you're now experiencing or starting to experience never existed. This is why I came to realize that my cancer story, although enters when I'm 19, it has tentacles all the way to when I was a child, even before I was born. And that's why I was telling you, certain stories are not just death sentences. In fact, half the time, anybody who has an experience with chronic illness or terminal illness or an accident or a near-death experience, something that is a major life event, it becomes both a life and a death sentence. Why is that so? Because it starts to define you. It starts to refine you as well into the smaller, subtle details of who you are. So I get to realize that although I was never ill, there was no sense of my health deteriorating like it's always the case for many people who get diagnosed. I have a convulsion after a class on 11th of November, 2011. This is I'm now in my year 1 of college. And the last thing I remember is the faces of Farah and James at Gandhi Wing looking and waving back frantically as I'm being pushed into the university ambulance. And the last subtle detail I remember is, I don't know, it was in the evening, so you can imagine how Globe Cinema used to be. The amber and orange and red of vehicles moving, and the almost surreal quality of life in the city as they drive me to Aga Khan. And that separates the life of a before and an after. So there was no premonition of I was feeling sick or I had a drastic weight loss or I had been admitted. There was nothing like that. Many people often feel sick and then they go to a hospital and then they say, Doc, I'm feeling this type of funny. Could you check? Could we do some tests? And then the doctors run a test and then they say, something is wrong here. Could we do another second opinion? And then they confirm, it's actually cancer. So that was not my case. I convulse. I'm taken to the hospital. I wake up the following day and in a new environment in Aga Khan Hospital. And the nurse, Miss Khan, tells me, you were brought here by the university. Do you remember your name? I'm asking her, are you asking me to confirm a standard procedure or you actually want to know if I've forgotten who I am? I said, I remember my name. All right, let me call the doctor then. So the doctor comes and says, Omondi, how are you? You know, the pleasantries of introducing or dispensing the tension that was in the air during that time. In my mind, I feel it's just fatigue. Remember, grief has a way of manifesting itself physically. And I have not had any window period to rest, to process the grief, or to even mourn, or to even cry. I think it's just the general fatigue. And I'm like, things will be okay. But when the doctor comes, again, that face, the sinister face, when there is some about to be a very bad news coming for you, he says, Omondi, you don't look good. Have you been unwell? It's like, no, but you look jaundiced. Your eyes are yellow. Have you looked at the mirror? When was the last time you looked at your mirror? I'm like, no, sisi ni wanaume tuangaliegi mirror hivyo all the time. I'm like, okay, so you sit tight. We're doing some couple of tests and we will come back when they are out so that we can determine what might have caused your convulsion. We do not want to speculate. Now, that word really angered me. Speculate. What do you mean speculate? And usually when...
So they could know what it is.
They could know.
But they can't tell with finality.
Yes, with finality. And usually it is a very diplomatic word of saying things are not looking so good, but until you are certain, that's when we will tell you one or two things is the case. So I sit tight. I look at the window. I remember calling my nanny, Mrs. Wasike, and asking to talk to her, who doesn't talk. She's just barely a few months old, but I want to just hear her breathing or something. And there is a chance when you have been beaten, somehow they say that is what trauma is. It's a storage of a bad experience that has happened to you, because the body keeps scores. Your life form or the entity of who you are as a human being keeps scores. So when you have been hurt before, when you have grieved before, when you have been sick before, it puts you at the edge of vigilance. So when something triggers it kidogo, you kind of feel like, something bad is about to happen. So I'm having all those information, but I'm also trying to rationalize that it could just be fatigue. I look at the window. Aga Khan Hospital has this very beautiful brick wall. And I look outside and I see it is about evening on a Saturday on 12th. And people are walking out. Some have come to see their loved ones and now they're going back. Maybe some are making shifts. I wonder what's going on in their lives. And I wonder if they are able to, the same thing you were telling me, if somebody does not empathize or somebody does not occupy your shoe. If you look outside on the street right now, we do not know what's going on in somebody's head, whether they did not take breakfast or they haven't taken any meal in the last 3 days. I wonder what's the case for me, what's coming up. So I sit tight, and when they do rounds on Sunday, now I confirm it. They're still very dodgy about it because the final liver function test has not come. They tell me my right side, my right upper side is swollen. I can see it now. It's stiff. I'm having a very bad pain. And I asked them, could you up the dosage a little bit? They're like, but we did that a while ago. I'm like, okay, so I'll brave it. On Monday, they come for the morning shifts. This time, the doctor is not alone. He has a panel of doctors. He tells me, do you have somebody you can call? I'm like, no, I can take it. Are you sure? It's okay. And then now it confirms it. So we found out that your liver is extended to mean inflamed or it may swell. And you have a very bad, severe infection in your blood and in your liver. In fact, it looks like your liver has lesions, like it's scarred. And then now they start asking the tough questions in terms of trying to reduce or trying to sift, the things from, just reduce stuff. They ask, have you been drinking? Have you been a drinker before? I'm like, no. And narcotics? No. Okay. Do you have a family history of chronic illness like liver disease or drinking or heart disease? Like, no. Are you sure? They go back to consult. Because it's very hard for them to reconcile what they're seeing on the scans and the kind of information I'm telling. Remember, I was not sick. I was not feeling unwell. I was just okay. And then now there is a life before and an after. So they're trying to reconcile. How could that be? But medicine sometimes is one of the most mysterious things. The human body, the way it was designed, it has some hidden parts of destiny. Where whether we scan it, whether we have some of the highest resolutions, we cannot never see fully what's inside the body. And I remember joking with Dr. Malkit and telling him, you have some of the most advanced equipment to look into the body, but maybe what you're looking for cannot be seen by the eye. You're like, you're up to something. And it was very true, because now when you're looking back, many people say, and many people who have written, from Christopher Hitchens to Anita Mojay, who have written about cancer and in their memoirs, they tend to link it with a certain unoccupied story that manifested in a certain way. So remember, now I'm being more spiritual about what's happening in my life. You're putting things into perspective. And it is a very vivid frame. You're almost convinced it is true, that it is not just cancer. There is no way this is grief. How could my liver just swell out of nowhere? What is happening to me? Is it a spiritual battle, or is it just another disease that is happening to another human being? And so they tell me, so the results are out, and we suspect. Then again, they do not want to be very certain. We suspect a liver disease or a liver cancer. We are doing the second round of the tests and the scans.
Who is paying for all this?
During that time, I had money. I had good money. We were earning 2,000 bob a day.
From what?
I was also writing online from the internship that I was doing.
All this money, you were paying them off your pocket?
Yes. And then also I was also covered by my grandmother's insurance. And I had a cover also with Heritage. That was my own. So I was still covered. So they do the second rounds, and then on Tuesday they come back, and now it's confirmed. It's liver cancer. It's stage 2. It's called hepatocellular carcinoma, one of the most common types of liver cancer.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that kind of cancer? But you could track back when they are telling you that you have lacerations, when you're telling you that you have extended liver. Can you put it into perspective in a layman's language? What is going on in the body?
I don't know whether we push it to the cancer. Let me just...
Yes, we can for sure. Because now I think we are also...
Yes, let's push it to the cancer experience. I'll give it a elaborate answer.
Okay.
So this is one of the forms of liver cancer. And the liver, as we know, it is one of the most important organs. It does a lot of functions, from stabilizing the body to detoxifying it to blood. So it does a lot of functions. And when it is in crisis, as it was for my case, then your health falls very fast. And then now you're looking in the mirror and you're like, these doctors were right. I was not very keen. I've actually lost weight. You see, my eyes look red and yellow. There's something, I'm not completely 100. There's something off about me. And so they say, I am lucky. What do you mean lucky, doc? People are dying of cancer. I've probably only had people who have survived cancer for 5 years. The prognosis for a liver cancer on stage 2 at that time was 5 years.
What does that mean?
Prognosis is the kind of life expectancy, or the quality of life that you are expected to have upon diagnosis. Let's say you are diagnosed today and it is a certain stage. So they see that if the disease progresses in the way that they expected, that they foresee, then it might go for maybe 2-3 years or 4 years or even a week when it is late stage. We'll talk about it when I'll be talking about staging cancer. So I question, how could I be lucky with cancer? They say, okay, because liver cancer is mostly diagnosed during late stage when there is very little you can do, including a transplant. But then the difficulty comes in because my cancer is inoperable, it's unresectable, and they need to first shrink the tumors. That's when they can think of, how can we do a resection cutting the part that is affected, or can we do a transplant? Now, inoperable means they cannot cut it actively, because liver, it can be resected so that it grows back. A liver can have a transplant. In other words, a donor could donate a liver to you, or part of their liver to you, and then they transplant it. So that was not the case for me. So that complicates my story. And I take a discharge, a request for a discharge, and go back home. I remember coming home and laying next to my daughter, and it's the first time I cried. When I finished, I think Mrs. Wasike had me crying, and she told me she's going to take a word to Nikki's family, to Nikki's grandma. She did, and I felt so alone. I felt terrified. I felt like a child, like my little child was very tiny. And I felt like lost. It's the first time it now hit me, because at first time I was rationalizing, I'm a man, I can take this, this is just another experience. But then now you come home and you realize it's a reality. Your life has changed significantly, in fact, forever. So that terrified me. And I gathered courage. I remember on 17th of November, I go back to University of Nairobi, football field, the one overlooking Museum Hill. I sit on the trenches and I make a call. Usually it was just the pleasantries or small talk. School telling her their school, as your daughter, giving you the journalism of the village, what's happening in the village. But we realize this, we are avoiding something. I'm particularly avoiding mentioning what is happening in my world to my grandma. And I tell her, could you travel? I'm sending you some money, travel tomorrow without fail, because we need to hear something together. So because my grandmother has my history of expulsion from both primary and secondary school, she thinks that I might be expelled, because I was also very active during my student politics. So she thinks that's the case. And because University of Nairobi was such a hostile place, that's the first thing she asked me. You should go there and study instead of politicking. But I tell her that's not the case, but I just need you to travel. There is a deep sigh between us when I end that call. That's one of the longest calls I've ever had to make. And this is a difficulty that many people experience, as we will come to know later, on breaking the news to a loved one.
Thank you very much, Chuka.
Yes.
I think we'll end this episode here. It's 1.5 hours.
Right.
So, people of the internet, thank you very much. This is a very intimate story, and I've loved it. I continue loving it. I would ask you that if you have a relative that has been in pain, or is having terminal illness, or is having chronic illness, this series explores that. It explores the pain, the relationships, going to the hospital in and out. So I welcome you to please subscribe, share this episode with somebody that you think needs to listen to this story. Maybe it will give them some
insight,
hope,
inspiration,
yeah.
lifeline, all those.
Yeah. So
it might heartbreak you also. Which is
until another episode, bye for now.